on Prime Crime.
Sheriff's office, who's inside? Watch our asses, John.
It's a scene that left officers shocked.
And saw that there was some legs on the ground, saw that there was blood. I saw that the guy was missing half his face.
A race to find a missing girl.
Any child comes up missing, it pisses me off.
My first thoughts were, it was like I was literally seeing a ghost.
And the evil behind it all.
There is no doubt in my mind that you are one of the most dangerous men to ever walk on this planet.
Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to Prime Crime. This is where we do a deeper dive into the most high-profile and memorable true crime cases. Several years ago, the nation was captivated by an unspeakable crime and kidnapping. And what would unfold, we're still trying to explain.
Here in County 911, where is your husband? Somebody I just want from. Hello?
What you're hearing is the frantic call police received on October 15th, 2018. The call originated from the cell phone of Jayme Closs from Barron County, Wisconsin.
The Jayme Closs 911 call is absolutely chilling. You don't hear a whole lot of explanation. You hear some words, but you mainly hear the chaos that's going on.
Then there's quiet.
Hello?
Officers rush to the home of Denise, her husband James, and their 13-year-old daughter Jayme.
Open door. Somebody's down. Somebody's down.
Sheriff's office, who's inside? Watch our asses, John.
When authorities arrive just minutes after the 911 call, they find a gruesome sight.
We got a dead body in this one. We got a body in here too.
James and Jayme Closs are shot dead.
Dead body right at the front door. Heavy trauma to the face, gunshot, looks like a shotgun shell to the face. There's one shell, expended shell, next to the body. Found another one in the bathroom, almost directly straight back from the front door, in the bathtub, dead.
As for Jayme,
Door's been breached. We're missing somebody.
She's nowhere to be found.
We're still missing a gun? We're missing a lot.
A widespread search for the missing teenager ensues, with the FBI even offering a reward of $25,000 for information leading to Jayme's whereabouts.
There were search teams put together. There were thousands of tips rolling in. 95% of those tips end up being nothing. Canvassing, knocking on doors. They did not exhaust one means to try to find their answer.
We statistically know that every hour that passes in a situation like this where a child is abducted, the chance of finding them alive goes down. Two people who brutally murdered and she was taken from the house. There isn't higher stakes than that ever.
About a week later, as Jayme's parents are laid to rest, a startling development. Authorities are alerted to someone breaking into the Claus home. The burglar is apprehended and ID'd as 32-year-old Kyle Janky Annis.
In all reality, it was her underwear or something like that. Any child comes up missing, it pisses me off. And it makes me want to go fucking hunt him.
Janky Annis turns out to not be the killer, just a common criminal who wanted to steal some things.
Turns out to be a massive red herring, but it drains very important resources and manpower at a time when you can't afford to be diverted from the intention of the investigation.
At the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, we were wondering the same thing. Is Jayme out there? Is she even alive? As the days went on, media attention, at least nationally, started to go down. We're strategizing behind the scenes, trying to figure out, what we could do. I had plans to go out to Wisconsin and see if we could bring more attention to Jayme's case.
Unfortunately for investigators in the Claus family, with each passing day, the outcome for Jayme is getting worse and worse.
Douglas County 911. Hi. I have a young lady at my house right now, and she says her name is Jayme Closs.
On January 10th, 2019, over 2 months after the killings, Jayme Closs is suddenly found alive in Gordon, Wisconsin, an hour away from Barron.
Okay, have you seen her photo, ma'am? Yes, it is her. I 100% think it is her. Okay.
For 88 days, I have stood before you and said we would work tirelessly to bring Jayme Closs home. Today, I can report we have done just that.
When we heard the news that Jayme was found, I can't even describe it to you what happened at the National Center. We were stunned. It was emotional. We were happy.
According to the caller, Kristen Kazinkas, her neighbor, Jeannie Nutter, found Claus. She gets on the phone and explains what happened.
So how did she come up upon your cabin? I was walking my dog, and we were almost home, and she was walking towards me, crying, saying, "You gotta help me, you gotta help me."
Jayme's ability to escape in this case is amazing to me. I mean, all too often, and unfortunately most of the time, we don't have a positive resolution like this. It's really through the resilience and the courage of the person who's escaped.
When I saw her, I knew she was in trouble because I knew wherever she came from, she left in a hurry, because she just had on a sweatshirt and leggings and shoes that were too big for her.
It's rare to have somebody found alive after 48 hours in missing person cases, because the trail dries up very quickly if you're not able to find something within that period of time. Time and distance works against police officers. So 88 days is incredibly remarkable.
My first thoughts were I basically went into shock. I mean, it was like I was literally seeing a ghost. I told Jayme when she was sitting on my couch yesterday, I just said, "I am so glad to see you."
Jayme was able to escape, but from who?
Jayme, do you know when he's going to come back? She thought he was going to come back home at midnight.
Who's going to come back?
Jake Thomas Patterson, a then 21-year-old ex-Marine. After Nutter identifies the suspect, Patterson's quickly located by police while in his car and immediately says, "I did it." But when he's thrown in the back of a cruiser, listen to the odd exchange between him and the officer.
You're no longer detained. You're under arrest now, okay?
For what?
Oh, they'll tell you when you get up to the officer.
Someone gonna turn off my car?
Yeah.
Do something with it?
The other officer will take care of it for you. It's going to be a little bit of a drive, so if you want to get comfy.
I don't think that's possible.
On some level, he's confused, he's in shock, even though he knew this probably would be the end of how it all turned out.
Soon after his arrest, Patterson not only admits to police that he kidnapped Jayme and murdered her parents, but he voluntarily provides additional dark details.
I think Jake Patterson almost immediately confessed because he knew that if Jayme ever escaped, he was done for. I mean, there's no debate about what happened. There's no chance of him trying to explain this away.
We would learn he became infatuated with the 13-year-old after randomly seeing her getting on a school bus.
It seems to me like he had this thing of wanting to abduct someone, a child, and this presented the opportunity for it. Something clicked in him and it flipped a switch, and that was the moment.
Through Patterson's admission, we got a clearer picture of what was happening on that 911 phone call.
By his own admission, I think he was only in that house for 4 minutes or so. So to carry out this entire thing that quickly, it tells me that he had an objective. He knew what he was doing. He had a purpose and a focus. He needed to kill the father first because that's the biggest threat you're going to have.
He actually shot James through the window, point blank, before shooting the front door, kicking it down, and then trying to find where Jayme was. He ended up busting through into the bathroom and finding them both in the tub with the mother trying to protect her at that point.
Investigators then realized that Patterson had slipped through their fingers. Let's go back to Deputy John Fick's dashcam. As he rushes to the Claus home on the night of the murders, notice the car on the left. That was Jake Patterson, driving with a stolen license, and Jayme tied up in the trunk, something officers even picked up on at the time.
That one car was heading out as we were coming, but they yielded.
On camera.
Camera? Yep.
The car's going that way.
That maroon car that yielded?
Yeah, you're right. I had it at 54.
You know, we all want to say, you know, darn it, that he should have been caught. The police were that close. But remember, the police had just received a call from the house that an act of violence was taking place. So their main focus was on getting to that house as quick as they could. Patterson actually pulls off to the shoulder to let the police pass, which is what most people do. So he didn't do anything out of the ordinary.
I downloaded the video. I couldn't get anything. Like, the headlights were blocking it, and I don't even know if he even had a front license plate.
You know, it's just one of those real unfortunate things that they didn't have the manpower to dispatch someone to follow or get on that car and respond to the scene at the same time.
When we come back, we're going to get into the details of Jayme's captivity, and we hear from Patterson himself.
Mr. Patterson, not only were you a danger to the Claus family,
then I shined it again and saw that there was some legs on the ground, saw that there was blood, opened the door, and said that I saw that the guy was missing half his face.
Back on January 10, 2019, 13-year-old Jayme Closs stunned the world by miraculously escaping the home of Jake Patterson, the man who had murdered her parents in cold blood and held her hostage for months. Now, Patterson immediately confessed, and we would then gain greater insight into the kidnapping and his mind. What exactly happened, though, during Jayme's 88 days of imprisonment? According to Patterson, he kept the girl locked in his cabin, at times forcing her under his bed for hours with no food, water, or bathroom breaks. They would play board games, watch TV, and would even sleep in the same bed.
Friends of his have said during that time frame they noticed an uptick in his personality, that he was friendly and he seemed to be happier. So I think in his warped mind, he was forming a life together with Jayme, and they were going to, I don't know, maybe live happily ever after.
In this particular case, it was about power and control combined. Knowing that he had somebody who was young and immature that he could have power over, and she could do whatever he wants her to do.
Patterson, though, never thought Jayme would actually try to escape.
You know, obviously Jayme is under this tremendous fear, and he's using that fear in the beginning to keep her captive. He doesn't have to do much to make her more fearful of him because of what she witnessed at her own house that night.
I think for her, she just kept it together every day. She didn't know when she was going to get out, or if she ever was going to. It must have taken everything inside her to just take that moment and run. I can't even say enough about how brave and courageous she was that day.
Patterson claims, though, despite his obsession with Jayme, he never sexually assaulted her.
It was never about the sexuality of it. I think it was about the companionship and having somebody that he can hold accountable to him.
Since the district attorney in that area decided not to prosecute any charges that related to behavior of those 88 days, they decided not to put Jayme through any kind of investigation. So we really won't ever really know what happened during those 88 days in full detail.
Patterson's charged with intentional homicide, kidnapping, and armed burglary. As he sat in jail awaiting trial, he stuns the public by writing a letter to a local reporter, once again providing more answers into what he was thinking.
The cops say I planned this thoroughly and that I said that. They're really good at twisting your words around, put them in different spots, straight up lie. Little mad about that. Trying to cover up their mistakes, I guess. This was mostly on impulse. I don't think like a serial killer.
I think Patterson writing the letter to the local reporter was his way of letting the public know what was happening in his head. It was an atrocious act. Now it's his time to say, you know what? Yeah, I did this, but for the reason is because of these issues that he has.
When asked what was going through his mind when he started perpetrating the crime, Patterson said he was angry and didn't want to do it, but the reason I did this is complicated.
Patterson ends up not fighting the charges.
How do you plead to that charge?
Guilty. Guilty. Guilty.
I think that he knew he couldn't beat the charges and he wanted it over as soon as possible. In his warped mind, again, he did voice some concern about not wanting to put Jayme through a trial. He put her through so much, right? The horrific things that he did to her. And now he has some kind of feigned concern. You know, I'm not a psychologist, but I think that, you know, some of that might have been genuine.
At Patterson's sentencing, it became a question of whether or not this man could ever get a chance at parole. We would hear powerful victim impact statements, but in one of the most dramatic moments, a family attorney reads a statement from Jayme Closs.
I don't want to even see my home or my stuff because of the memory of that night. My parents and my home were the most important things in my life. He took them away from me in a way that will always leave me with a horrifying memory. But there are some things that Jake Patterson can never take from me. He can't take my freedom. He thought that he could own me, but he was wrong. I was smarter. I watched his routine and I took back my freedom. I will always have my freedom and he will not.
Her family members now who are helping raise her gave her the strength to say that she will not let this influence the way she lives the rest of her life, that she will be happy going forward and that he's going to be in her rearview mirror. So I think it's extremely powerful.
You know, the fact that he tried to take things from her, and he did take things from her, but he couldn't take away who she was. I saw it as a very remarkable young woman.
Then Patterson has some final words himself.
I would do, like, absolutely anything to take back what I did, you know. I would die. I would do absolutely anything to bring them back, you know. I don't care about me, I'm just so sorry. That's all.
I think Patterson apologizing and crying and tearing up was, again, another manipulation. Whether or not he felt terrible about it, he said he wanted to go back in time and he wished he didn't kill her parents and he wished he wasn't in that situation. Well, of course not. He's going to jail for the rest of his life.
Then it's Judge James Babler's turn, and he doesn't hold anything back.
Your actions and the ideas that you had are not normal. They are shockingly not normal. I have no idea what rehabilitation could be provided for you. No one suggested any rehabilitation because even from your own side, the doctors can't find anything wrong with you.
For a judge to use the harsh language that he did, you know, clearly indicates he was horrified by the events that took place in that house that night and subsequent to that night.
And these crimes rank as the most heinous and dangerous that I have seen either here or anywhere else in the state of Wisconsin and perhaps the United States.
At one point, Judge Babler read aloud the words of Patterson, but the defendant wasn't happy.
She was the first girl I saw once I had those ideas in my head. Mr. Patterson, not only were you a danger to the Claus family,
And that was his way of exerting his last morsel of power in that setting in order to show the public that, again, he is in charge.
there is no doubt in my mind that you are one of the most dangerous men to ever walk on this planet.
Babler sentenced Patterson to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 40 years.
Today was a very important step in the process of helping Jayme to move forward. We are satisfied with the outcome and believe that it will give Jayme some much-needed peace of mind.
As Jake Patterson spends the rest of his life behind bars wrestling with the decisions he made, he may also have to wrestle to save his life. In video obtained from the New Mexico Corrections Department, Patterson's seen getting into a physical altercation with another inmate after he reportedly was harassed for the crimes he committed against a minor.
It's typical when an offender abuses children, there's some kind of jailhouse code that if they get in contact with somebody who is incarcerated for those things, they're going to make it known that it's unacceptable. And a lot of times those people end up dead.
As for Jayme, her aunt and guardian Jennifer Smith says she's doing good, surrounded by loved ones, and is taking life day by day.
Jayme will very likely have more to say in the future, but we are grateful for you allowing her to do that on her own terms.
I've been involved in a couple of recoveries of this type in my career, and I think that in this case, the possibility of Jayme moving on with her life is strong. She has proved herself to be a very courageous, very remarkable, and very resilient young lady.
I just want people to remember that there are thousands of missing children out there. It's up to us to make sure we're aware of the missing children in our community, because we could be that person to help bring that child home.
At the time of this taping, we just passed the 2-year anniversary from when Jayme was found. And as we look back, it's still hard to make sense of why all this happened to her, and maybe it'll never make sense. But Jayme's aunt released a statement on the 2-year mark, encouraging everyone to never take life for granted, and that, quote, "You never know what tomorrow will bring. Always remember to take the time to tell your loved ones you love them." And maybe we just leave it at that. That's all we have for you on Prime Crime. Leave us your comments on Instagram and Twitter with the hashtag PrimeCrime. As always, thank you for joining us, and until next time, be safe. On Prime Crime.
You saw someone? Yes, I thought it was my apartment. I'm Oh my God. I'm sorry.
It's a police shooting hard to imagine. A reasonable mistake or murder.
I was scared this person's apartment was going to hurt me. And I'm so sorry.
And a defendant who may not be what she seems.
I do believe that she is re-traumatizing the family.
Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Weber and welcome to Prime Crime. This is where we do a deeper dive into the most high-profile and memorable true crime cases. There are a lot of dangers in the world, and our home is always supposed to be the place where we're safe. But for one young man, it proved to be anything but.
Get up, man. Dallas 911, this is Carla. Where's your emergency?
On September 6, 2018, in Dallas, Texas, police officer Amber Geiger returns back to her apartment complex after a 13-hour shift. But she doesn't go to her unit on the 3rd floor. Instead, she ends up on the 4th floor.
Hi, this is an off-duty officer. I need EMS. I'm in number.
What's your address? What's going on?
I'm an off-duty officer. I thought it was in my apartment, and I shot a guy thinking it was my apartment.
Geiger claimed that she mistakenly thought she entered her apartment, when in reality, it was the home of her 26-year-old neighbor, Botham Jean.
I think there were signs that should have showed her that she was going to the wrong place. I mean, at the outset, when she walks up to the front door, there's a red doormat that is not her own. That should have been a signal. Not only that, but entering into the apartment, it very much looked like any other bachelor's apartment, or what you would expect in a bachelor's apartment to look like. There was an ironing board that was out. There were, pictures and hangings on the wall that presumably did not look like the things in her own home.
I thought it was my apartment.
I need my new supervisor. Hey, bud. Hey, bud. Come on.
Then there are other subtle signs. So the amount of time that it takes to navigate from one floor to the other. Something usually goes off in your mind. It's taking me a little bit longer than it normally does. And then further, you look at the totality of the mistakes, right? It may be all small things, but if it's 10 small things, at what point do you kind of wake up and understand that you're in the wrong place?
Investigators would conclude that at the time Geiger entered the unit, Jean was on the couch eating ice cream. Evidence would even suggest that Jean may have been in a cowering or ducking position when shot. So then why did Geiger shoot him? Although she failed to clearly state this on the 911 call, she later said she thought Jean was an intruder and her life was in danger.
I don't believe that she reasonably perceived a threat here. She entered into an apartment that was not her own. It didn't have the same doormat. Presumably, the affixments and things on the walls were not like her own. Not only that, he was not armed. Maybe he spoke in a loud voice, but of course, that's because she was in his apartment.
Concealment and cover should come before firing your weapon when possible. Tactically, the best thing would have been to back out of the doorway and try to take cover. She had a radio, could have called 911 and so forth.
Stay with me, bud. She's tired. Hurry.
Was this Geiger's fault because she was overtired from a long shift, or because she was distracted? The investigation would show that Geiger had been sexting with her partner and occasional lover, Officer Martin Rivera, sending messages such as, "super horny today," and "want a touch?" In fact, Geiger was on the phone with Rivera as she pulled into her apartment complex.
She was certainly distracted, but distracted to a point where you would enter an apartment that was the wrong apartment, think that someone's an assailant, and kill them. That's quite a leap. Not to mention, she is an emergency service worker. That's why we give them so much praise, because they are constantly working under extreme conditions where they are a little bit tired, a little bit distracted, but that does not distract them from doing their job.
As Geiger excitedly tries to explain what happened, listen carefully to what she says.
You saw someone? Yes, I thought it was my apartment. Oh my God. I'm sorry.
Geiger's 911 call was very interesting. She seemed to be very focused on the consequence to her.
Okay, we have help on the way.
I know, but I'm gonna lose my job. I thought it was my apartment. I could have sworn I parked on the third floor.
Okay, I understand.
No, I thought it was my apartment.
Of course, she continues to reiterate that she thought it was her apartment. I think it was some 19 times. She talks about parking on the wrong floor, which I don't know how she would know that if she had just shot someone. Seemed to me that she was getting together her excuse that she was going to say to the 911 operator and whoever else to justify the shooting of both on John.
Oh my God, I'm done. I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry.
In fairness, a shooting is a life-altering event. The overwhelming majority of police officers go through 20, 25 years of service and never fire their weapons. And to shoot your weapon and to hit someone and know that that person's probably going to expire is a life-altering event. So she certainly did sound a little panicked on the 911 calls. However, that's somewhat reasonable.
Towards the end of the 911 call, we hear officers responding to the crime scene. That's when new pieces of the story come into focus.
I thought they were in my apartment. I thought this was my floor.
Okay, and where are you at right now?
I'm inside the apartment with him. Hey, come on.
What's your name?
I'm Amber Geiger.
Dallas police officer Amber Geiger shot and killed her unarmed neighbor Botham Jean inside his home. According to Geiger, she mistakenly believed Jean was an assailant in her own apartment. As she's on the phone with 911 dispatch, law enforcement rush to the scene. Officers then race into Jean's apartment. While the responding officers desperately tried but ultimately couldn't save Jean's life, the audio and video at the time told a lot about what Amber Geiger did, or rather, didn't do.
More than likely, she failed to render aid to Botham John. It's just plain and simple.
Hey, bud. Hey, bud. Come on.
She's not administering any CPR or anything like that when the officers arrived. There's no blood on her. She hadn't really touched him. Neither is she asking for any advice from the 911 officer or discussing what type of medical aid can be given in order to save his life.
Hey, bud. Hey, bud. They're coming, bud. I'm sorry, man.
As a police officer, if someone's injured, whether it's at your hand or the hand of another, it is your responsibility to render aid. It's the duty and responsibility of a police officer to protect the rights of an individual they are arresting.
So how could a trained police officer do this? When this shooting happened, the blame didn't just rest on Geiger. Jean's family filed a lawsuit against the city of Dallas, which at the time of this taping is still ongoing.
We learned about the ratification of Amber Geiger's behavior by the Dallas Police Department. They provided her training, her equipment. They retained her as an officer.
Amber Geiger was asked a number of questions about training. She stated under oath that she did not recall her CPR training. She stated under oath that she did not recall her de-escalation training. So there were serious training issues that we think led to the death of both of them. Amber Geiger talked about being extremely sleepy. She talked about the issues of police officers having to work excessive overtime hours. Those are issues that we believe places the city of Dallas on the hook.
So it's very interesting when we look at the police department. They're not necessarily responsible. What could the police department in and of itself have done to avoid this situation? Not much, not much. They could require police officers to leave their firearms at work. Most police departments do not do that because the reality is we do, in many cases, want police officers to be able to take action off duty if they see a crime being committed.
The city of Dallas has been exposed enough to put a significant pressure on them to want to make this case go away in terms of the settlement.
There would be a lot of explaining to do, but the person we wanted to hear from the most was the shooter herself.
It was the only option that went through my head. I was at home, and I...
Ma'am, will you answer my questions?
Yes, sir.
Amber Geiger, the former Dallas police officer who shot Botham Jean to death in his own apartment, was arrested and ultimately charged with murder. During her 2019 trial, the question for the jury was whether Geiger's mistakes and actions were criminal, a question that became all the more complicated when Geiger took the stand.
And why did you shoot Amber?
I was scared he was going to kill me.
Amber Geiger took the stand in her trial, and I think that was kind of a no-brainer. Quite often, we don't want defendants to take the stand. In this case, she had to. She had to tell her side of the story because the evidence was overwhelming.
I heard moving around inside my apartment.
What type of moving around?
Like loud shuffling, someone walking.
What did the figure do after you said, "Let me see your hands"?
He started coming towards me.
Did you hear anything as he was walking towards you?
There was a loud yell. He was yelling, "Hey, hey, hey," in an aggressive voice.
Okay.
The defense's case was entirely turned on whether her mistake was reasonable. If her mistake was reasonable, then everything that flowed from the mistake was just simply that, a mistake, and it was excusable.
Why did you fire?
So I was scared. I was scared this person's apartment was going to hurt me. And I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
Whether or not this was an accident, look, I just can't see it. She went to this house, saw the door open, the doormat was different. The accoutrements in the house were different. There was a different person in the house. I don't see how that is reasonably perceived as a mistake.
I kind of didn't buy it. She is was a police officer, did somewhat work against her. What do we think of police officers? We think of those are folks who have some type of heightened sense of awareness and where they are.
When the prosecution questioned Geiger, they tried to show the jury just how irrational she acted that night.
You should have taken a position of cover and concealment and got help. And instead you decided to go in.
Yes, I did go in.
You had a police radio on you, didn't you?
I did.
When law enforcement officers encounter a circumstance where they might be confronting somebody in some type of illegal behavior, such as a burglary, the idea is not for them to rush in Rambo style and confront a burglar because that puts them in danger that they don't necessarily need to be in.
Then Geiger dropped a bombshell.
When you pulled that trigger, you intended to kill Mr. John.
He was the threat, yes, sir.
Will you answer my question? When you aimed and pulled the trigger at Mr. John, shooting him in center mass exactly where you are trained, you intended to kill Mr. John.
I did.
I literally, my hand went over my mouth when I heard that. I don't think I've ever heard a police officer testify that they intended to kill someone. I've heard police officers testify they intended to stop the threat. They intended to protect themselves, protect someone else. Police officers are not trained to kill.
How do you feel what you did to Mr. John?
I feel like a terrible person. I feel like a piece of crap. I hate that I have to live with this every single day of my life. And I ask God for forgiveness, and I hate myself every single day.
She absolutely showed a high level of remorse. It wasn't remorse just because she was going to go to jail. This was something that she didn't, an outcome that she didn't intend.
I feel like I don't deserve a chance to be with my family and friends. I wish he was the one with the gun that killed me. I never wanted to take an innocent person's life. And I am so sorry.
Amber Geiger's testimony, for me, seemed a little bit contrived. She was very focused on herself and what was going to happen to her. Of course, there were tears that were being shed, and it's hard to watch someone hurting, but it wasn't entirely moving for me, given the gravity of the mistake and the life that she'd taken.
We, the jury, unanimously find the defendant, Amber Geiger, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment. No outburst.
I was surprised by the verdict. It is very rare that law enforcement officers are even charged, let alone convicted.
I would have to say I was not surprised by the verdict. I did not hear any reasonable arguments as to the reasonableness of her mistake.
Well, I think that this case stands for the proposition that everyone will be held accountable. It doesn't make any difference what your profession is or who you are. We're going to handle it appropriately and fairly, and we think that a Dallas County jury did the same thing.
The trial itself was dramatic, but what happened at sentencing was something entirely unexpected.
Quite frankly, I've never seen anything like the end of this trial.
This is not about hate. It's about being scared that night.
Former Dallas police officer Amber Geiger was convicted of murdering her neighbor Botham Jean in his own apartment after she claimed she accidentally entered the wrong unit. When it came to sentencing, the state introduced new evidence, the racially charged text message history of Geiger. In one message, she arguably pokes fun at the death of Martin Luther King Jr., and in another, criticizes black officers.
Her text messages reveal that she's definitely got some issues of bias, or at the very least, some type of insecurity about being around and or working with black people.
The same jury that convicted Geiger now had to determine her sentence, which ranged from 5 to 99 years in prison. Their decision?
And assess the defendant's punishment at 10 years imprisonment in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
The sentence in my mind was a little lenient. The jury took some mercy on her, probably because they felt sympathy for Ms. Geiger.
I think this sentence was appropriate. It goes far beyond prison. Her life is changed, if not ruined. I think that this is going to haunt her.
We respect the jury's decision. We had a diverse jury from across the county. They heard all of the evidence and they made their decision based on the facts of the case, and we respect that.
But the surprises wouldn't stop there. After the sentencing, Jean's brother Brant took the stand, and in an incredible twist, he asked for the court's permission to give Geiger a hug.
Quite frankly, I've never seen anything like the end of this trial, the sentencing phase. I was in shock. I was in complete shock. I believe that helped them to let them know that they were forgiving her, because so they would not have to carry that portion of the pain around with them.
It's just amazing that that young man could find that amount of forgiveness and love in his heart. The best qualities of his brother were showing through him at that moment.
Then Judge Tammy Kemp followed suit and not only hugged Geiger, but lent her her Bible.
When I saw that initially, the judge giving Ms. Geiger a hug and the Bible, I thought it was a little much. But again, maybe the testimony of Ms. Geiger really made a lasting impression on everyone in that courtroom.
I don't think there was any evidence that showed that she's an inherently bad person. The judge obviously felt that she was not an evil person, and she responded what I feel was in an appropriate way. I don't have any problems with what the judge did.
At the time of this taping, Geiger has appealed her case, arguing she shouldn't have been convicted of murder. Rather, her legal team says she should either receive an acquittal or a conviction on the lower charge of criminally negligent homicide and be resentenced.
I don't see her being successful at all. Courts don't like to overturn jury verdicts, especially in this type of case. When we talk about this criminal negligence standard, it means that there was something that one should have known and they didn't know. I don't see how the charge could be negligence if she herself on the stand said she intended to kill someone.
It may be a dangerous, slippery slope for her. Asking to be resentenced, maybe she gets resentenced to worse. I think the fact that she appeals on those grounds, that she believes that the conviction should be thrown out, is evidence that she is not repentant, and that she does not really feel sorry. And it really, draws some question to the tears that she shed in trial. I do believe that she is re-traumatizing the family, who is trying to move on with this, and showed a lot of grace and dignity towards Ms. Geiger, as if the mercy or the grace that was shown to her was not good enough. And in some regards, it may be a tad shameful.
The death of Botham Jean is as heartbreaking as it is scary, and there are a lot of takeaways from this story. But when you think about what happened at the sentencing, a big one for many is you can forgive, but never forget. That's all we have for you here on Prime Crime. Leave us your comments on Instagram and Twitter with the hashtag PrimeCrime. As always, thank you for joining us, and until next time, be safe.